as we go forward. Thank you for coming to this just-in-time learning through the SEEP network. I am Ann Jolly. I have been a friend of SEEP for probably 18 years. Yes, since I was but a wee babe, I have been a friend of SEEP. I have been to many SEEP network conferences and have loved the excitement and energy that the SEEP network brings to ministry. And I'm grateful for the SEEP network. I currently serve in a smaller church outside of Chicago in the Diocese of Chicago. And I love that the SEEP network incorporates teeny tiny churches to giant churches, and we all have something to share with each other. I'm particularly interested in how we move forward as a church with online and in-person worship in this time and moving forward. So that is the focus of this time together, is how do we do that? What technology do we use? How can we learn from each other and engage our parishioners in meaningful sacramental worship, whether it's online or in person? So we're so glad you're here. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves after I open us in prayer, and then we'll move forward with questions and engagement. Let us pray. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Most holy God, you who created the earth, we give you thanks for creation and creativity. You introduced to us the liberating life of life in your hands through tablets that gave us commandments that ordered our lives. And we thank you for the tablets we use today that are ordering our new lives, that guide us in our worship and in our service to you in this world. Be with us as we have this conversation today. May your Spirit embolden us to share your love and your word with this hurt and broken world. Amen. All right, Scott, lead us off. Introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
Sure. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and about my context. Is that right, Anne, right now? Okay,
yes. Perfect.
So my name is Scott Zaucha. I am the rector at St. Anne's Episcopal Church, which is a smallish church on the far northwest side of the Chicago suburbs. So we're sort of the first town past the suburbs in the Diocese of Chicago. Just for context of who we are, we're, before COVID, pre-COVID times, we were an average Sunday attendance of about 50 to 60. So on the small end of the churches that are represented today, I'm a half-time rector. So our staff includes a half-time priest, a half-time parish administrator, and a very, very part-time musician who does quite a lot in her very, very part-time hours. So that's, and we work with an operating budget of about $170,000 a year. So we are a group of folks who makes every penny count. We're not an endowed parish. Instead, we chose to have a mortgage. So that's how we kind of operate. All this to say is that we are doing online worship in a somewhat slapdash, scrappy way, and that seems to be working for us in some ways right now. So I've spent about $750 on technology since March. The way that we're doing worship is we have found that Zoom is not working well for our parishioners. In conversation with them, Zoom is the least enjoyed option. We were doing for several months pre-recorded services of morning prayer on YouTube, services that we found worked as long as they stayed shorter than 30 minutes. This summer we moved outside and we've been having outdoor live streams and in-person Eucharist, so everything is hybrid. About 30 people present with a live stream going out to those worshiping at home. And we try to be really clear that we're worshiping as one community, some present and some at home. As we move into the fall with the unpredictability of Midwestern weather, we have moved back indoors. So we are having one indoor service with a cap of 25 people. We are allowed to have 25% of our capacity. So that puts us at 25 folks. And then starting this Sunday, we'll be having a campfire Eucharist. So it'll be cold this Sunday, about 40 degrees. And we're going to gather people around the campfire in our side yard for those who can't be indoors. We are expecting that we'll be back indoors this fall. So we're planning for Advent, really everything after All Saints Day, to be online only. And we'll probably go back to that morning prayer pre-recorded. Two other things I want to throw out there that we've been doing that have landed really well with our folks is one is hymns at home. So our musician pre-records hymns that we put in a separate video on YouTube. I found really that short videos work much better than long services for our people. So we do hymns at home where our parish musician plays 3 or 4 hymns. I lay the sheet music over the top of it and people can sing along at home. No choir, no nothing, just piano or organ to sing along with in your home or in your car. The second thing is we did a series of videos recently for the season of creation where we had parishioners pre-record prayers or poems dealing with the created world. And we put those every day on our YouTube page for about 2 weeks. And those received a huge amount of interaction with and traffic from our parishioners. So those are two. I'm finding that the little small things like short 2-minute videos of prayers can make as much of an impact as much as I love a Sunday Eucharist. Some of those short prayers make as much of an impact. That's a little bit about who we are and how we're worshiping right now.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Exciting stuff. Campfire church. Can I bring my marshmallows? Angela, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Angela Shepard. I serve as rector of St. Bartholomew's located in Atlanta, where I've been for just about 2.5 years now. And in our context, we have pre-COVID ASA 201. Our budget is just over $500,000, and we do have an endowment. In terms of staff, full-time administrator, musician, sexton, cook. Of course, we've had to abandon the hospitality with food these days, but he's there still nonetheless. Then I have 2 associate clergy who are less than part-time and 3 assisting priests who help out with preaching and pastoral care. So what we did early on, when we first had to leave the space, we decided to have morning prayer outside on the labyrinth. And those early days seem like now, like decades ago in some regard, but we had, somebody had a laptop and then there was this long microphone that connected to the lectern, and then someone set up an iPhone. And so that's what we did for a couple weeks. Then Holy Week came, and it was important for me that the people of St. Bartholomew's had a good experience during such an important time in the season of the church. So I suggested people go to the Cathedral of St. Philip here in the Diocese of Atlanta, or to the National Cathedral. I said, I want the best. And so these folks have a lot of money. Let's go there and worship God with them in the way that they can offer it. Then after that, we decided to we have worship from home. And I really feel blessed with the lay team that really just emerged out of the woodwork at this time to help support what happens. So we use Zoom, live stream on Sundays. And so one of our vergers took the lead on this, and now she calls herself the Zoom jockey. So she serves as the Zoom host. And then there are 3 or 4 others who can help on Sunday in terms of spotlighting lectors who participate from home, lectors, intercessors. Then the music, our musician pre-records most of the music. And so that's another time to spotlight. So we have different people who are working together to make certain the liturgy goes smoothly. And I'm thankful that it's the type of place where if there's a mistake, we just say, oh, well, because there's been several times when my microphone has been, I've forgotten to unmute myself, and I'm just kind of going on. And then I look at my phone and someone said, oh, you need to unmute yourself. Sometimes we go to the nave for live streaming. And so that requires a different set of people to help there. So when we go to the nave, so the church does not have cameras. So in the nave, we're using 2 iPads, one a gift to the church, one is my own. The deacon is there with her iPhone. I have an iPhone. The acolyte has her iPhone. And then there's a tech acolyte who unmutes and mutes the iPad. And so when we live stream, to Zoom, we also use a piece of software called Switchboard that pushes this out to Facebook as well as YouTube. So in the Zoom format as well as Facebook, there are greeters. So there's someone who puts into the chat box, welcome to St. Bartholomew's, we're glad you're here. There is a link that we have if we have a guest, so they can click on the link and send us their information if they want to get connected. And then there's a designated person on Facebook who's also welcoming people. The worship bulletin is emailed out to only people who are on our email list. So thus far, thankfully, we've been able to avoid any Zoom bombing. Don't let that happen this week. It's Children's Sabbath. So we've been free from that. The people really do appreciate Zoom in the way in which it's used, because being able to pass the peace is very important at St. Bart's. And so at that point, we pass the peace. And then afterwards, we use the breakout function to put people in different groups of, say, 5 to 6 for hospitality. So that happens maybe 10 to 12 minutes. And just like being in person, you know, you come back to the big room and then people start to peel off, and then there's always those who are there a little bit longer, sometimes up to an hour, having conversations. So we've been able to maintain community through Zoom. Now, of course, there are people who will not engage with Zoom at all. They'll go to Facebook or they'll watch on YouTube at a later time. In terms of what we're looking forward to. So we're looking at liturgy in the long run. So it's not just about today, because we understand that we will be in a hybrid mode for the unforeseeable future. So we are going to invest in cameras, which, like I said, we don't have now, also upgrading our audio system, microphones, things of that nature. We will have an outside access point that will allow us to live stream from the Memorial Garden on site, so people can be at home and still participate and see what's going on that way. Our diocese has put together a pool of money and allowed congregations who choose to apply for a grant. So we've applied for a grant and hope to receive some funds to help with what is a major project for us. So the last thing to share in terms of worship, we have just now been allowed to have people to receive the sacrament in one kind as of last week or so. So this coming Saturday, for the first time, we'll gather a few people to experiment with this outside worship on the labyrinth. And then we can have these indoor pilgrimages of 10 people tops for 30 minutes in the nave. So we have the whole process of signing up and having masks and a digital thermometer and spacing out and all of that. But none of this could be done without the support of dedicated lay people. So I am so thankful for the lay people who have said yes to this, and it allows us to worship God, like I say on Sunday, in the beauty of holiness, wherever you are. So I'll stop there.
Angela, thank you. That's a lot of great things. I love the Zoom jockey. That's awesome. Richard, let us know about you, your context, and what's going on.
Thank you, Anne, and hi, everybody. I'm Richard Wall. I'm at St. Paul's K Street in Washington, D.C. If you're familiar with D.C., we are about a 5-minute walk from the State Department, about 10 minutes from the White House, so we're pretty much right there in the middle of all the action. You know, this is probably true for everybody. This pandemic just came at the trickiest possible time, right? Our assistant had just left. We had just finished a strategic plan and were getting ready to present that to the vestry. And then the day after coming back from the SEEP conference, but not, I think, because of it, admin quit, giving us 4 days notice and moved across the country. So we were just at our most helpless. And when the pandemic came, I thought, well, why not? Everything else is happening, so add this on too. And I cast up my eyes to heaven and then thought, you know, we can do this. We can navigate this. This is going to be okay. So we flipped pretty quickly to an online platform. And I think the first thing we had to do as part of that was just to help people in the parish become familiar with things like Zoom and Facebook Live and YouTube, and saying to people, you know, this is going to require you to stretch yourself a little bit. You know, you may have to step outside of your comfort zone. And if we're doing that, then maybe we're going to grow in the midst of all this too. So we made ourselves available. We helped people figure out Zoom and Facebook Live and all those bits and pieces. And we came up with something we called the Daily Triptych, which was 7 days a week. Morning prayer via Zoom at 9 a.m. We live streamed a low mass at noon, and then Zoom evening prayer at 6 p.m. And Sundays were a little bit more elaborate. We could have up to 10 people in the church, a few musicians, a few acolytes, a few clergy, and lots of tripods. Lots of tripods, lots of iPhones, iPads. We have a guy sitting in the choir stalls, sort of controlling it all. And we're using Switcher, as I think, Angela, you said too, and have had really good results with that. So what we're doing is going straight to Facebook and also straight to YouTube at the same time. I realized that Zoom would be important given the demographics of this downtown parish. We have a lot of single people, a lot of childless people, a lot of people who may experience, you know, quite an intense isolation during the lockdown. So we did Zoom formation as well, and just discovered that people were really in this high learning mode that I hadn't really experienced before. So we did some Bible studies around the Israelites returning from exile and rebuilding the temple, which seemed to be so relevant to the present moments. And then we did a series we called Virtual Monasticism, which was really teaching people to treat their home as a church, right? You know, we've been talking for years about Benedictine spirituality and monastic spirituality and all those good things, but all of a sudden we're in a place where we can experience that in a completely new and different way. In terms of what we're doing right now, we're doing an outdoor mass every Sunday at 9. We're doing a mass indoors at 10:30, which is both in person and live streamed. And we said to people, hey, if you're sitting behind a tripod, you're just going to have to get over it. You know, this is sort of two congregations coming together to form one in this, you know, incredible mystery of faith. And then 6 o'clock in the evening, we do a Zoom evening prayer for people who really aren't comfortable being indoors or outdoors, but just need that little bit of human interaction and fellowship and things like that. I guess the only thing I'd conclude by saying is just, you know, I think sort of virtual worship is, of course, here to stay, but I keep saying to people, you know, this is not the end game. The end game is being back in church, because, you know, there's something about Christian community that really speaks about gathering. You know, the Christians gather, we gather together, we pass the peace, we sing together, we hug each other, we share refreshments, we share the Lord's meal together. And I keep just, you know, keeping that in front of people's eyes and vision as we talk about, you know, buying MacBook Pros and buying iPhones and monthly Switcher subscriptions and things like that. So really excited with all these techno developments, even more excited for everybody to be back truly home again.
Great, thank you, Richard. I have a couple questions, and I see that some people are already jumping in to put questions in the chat. That is fantastic. This is meant to be interactive. We want to share ideas with each other as much as we can in this format and be resources for each other. As Richard said, we're looking at gathering, right? That's gathering our hearts and our minds and our prayers together is what we do in worship. And also, I think we've all acknowledged that we will always have this online component, right? It's there, it's to stay. We've found that people who were shut-ins and couldn't come to services are all of a sudden full participating members of our worship again, which is life-giving and holy. I wonder how you all see this playing out in your congregations and how you're wrestling with how to include those people at such a time when primary worship seems to be in person again. How do we include the people who aren't physically with us electronically? Do you all have thoughts on that? Yes, they're all nodding at me. They have thoughts. Would any of you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, what we do right now, we're realizing there are some people who will just not engage Zoom, Facebook, anything at all, and that's fine. They have requested to receive a weekly mailing that includes the worship service. So that's one way, but I really do think that inviting people back to these in-person pilgrimages, indoor, outdoor, is a way that will include most people. Now, those who are already say shut in or a bit incapacitated, they will obviously not be able to join in. But I think having people to come back, those who are able, but then there are those who have fragile immune systems who will not come back until there is a vaccine, an antidote, sufficient safety. So we continue to work on that, but for now, most people are participating by Zoom.
Great. Richard, Scott, are you all doing things to connect the two worshiping communities? Because you're both doing some hybrid things.
There's kind of two separate things for me, right? There's the folks who are at home and are not going to access online services, right? And then there's the folks that are worshiping at home and are accessing the online services. With that first group, we're getting pretty analog. So we've put together, this is kind of the intersection between liturgy and pastoral care, right? So we've put together a community care team who are folks who are, in addition to me, calling and checking on folks, particularly those folks who are at home. We've done things like for Holy Week, we had people drop packets of our worship bulletins on their steps, and then we called them, and some people prayed with them through some of those liturgies. Most folks who can't access online liturgy can take a phone call. So that's how we've kind of engaged them. It's not perfect, but none of this is. With those folks who are at home and are worshiping online, that's a little bit of a tougher nut to crack. And I'm actually, in some ways, getting okay with, in the same way that we had an 8 a.m. an 8 a.m. group of folks and a 10 a.m. group of folks in sort of pre-COVID times, we're sort of developing an online cohort and an in-person cohort. And those online folks engage with each other in the chat, and the in-person folks chat with each other in the parking lot. And to some degree, that's okay. Now, there do need to be times when we bridge. And so we're thinking, big feast days like All Saints. We'll try to make sure that the communities are integrated in some way. But to some degree, I haven't found a perfect way to do that. And maybe I'm just trying to make myself feel better, but I think that's actually okay in some ways because they have one another, right? They have the people that tend to come in person and the people that tend to stay online have one another in the in-person chat or in the online chat.
Richard, did you have thoughts about that?
I mean, I think the only thing I would add is during our in-person live stream mass, we always pray for those worshiping with us virtually. And if they send in their prayer requests, their names, their intentions, we include those in the prayers of the people.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful gift. Somebody put in the chat that they have noticed, found in their area that technology, the internet service is really spotty. And so it's hard for some people to connect with technology in that way. And that's a reality, right? This is a privileged reality that we face. Have you all experienced that? And are there things that you have done in your communities around this?
We certainly have. We're on the edge of the suburbs and rural setting. So there are folks in our congregation that just don't have good internet service. And I mean, even those on our vestry who can't, usefully access Zoom when we do Zoom meetings because their internet is just so spotty. And that's one of the reasons that Zoom just doesn't really work for us, because I don't know anything about technology, but for some reason they can watch videos on YouTube better than they can be in a Zoom call. So YouTube seems to work better for that for us.
Yeah, that's helpful. I know that some people have said you can use a phone call for Zoom, which is true if you have access to the toll-free number, and a lot of places don't. So it's a toll call, which can land you with a huge bill on your phone line if you aren't careful. Unfortunate to do that. I wonder if there are things that you all are looking at as we move forward. I think you've all said we're looking at, I know Scott said this, and Angela, you had mentioned it earlier, perhaps we acknowledge the reality that through Christmas time, with it being winter, we are likely to be moving back into more online presence as we go forward. Are there particular technologies that you would like to get, or things that you're looking at to help engage an online presence? Again, they're all nodding at me, but nobody's saying anything.
So our vestry just approved money to buy some iPhones, iPads, a MacBook Pro for the church, and to up our monthly Switcher subscription, to buy some different tripods, that kinds of things. So not a big change, but just I think buying things that the church will own rather than sort of looting from the clergy and acolytes before the Mass begins.
Super. Richard, perhaps you could tell, because I'm not sure everybody knows what Switcher is. Could you explain just briefly what that is?
You see, I'm very good at sounding like I know what these things are.
Why do we have?
If I'm wrong, but I mean, so Switcher is an app that I have on my phone because we use my phone to do some live streaming, and Switcher allows things to go to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. And if I'm talking rubbish, I won't be offended if someone says that, right?
That's my understanding of it also.
Right.
Well, we're actually going in a slightly different, in terms of the things that we want or are buying. In a small parish with, really, I've got 2 or 3 folks who are comfortable helping me with cameras and streaming and things like that. And that's about it. We are trying to simplify. So we tried at one point having multiple cameras and running them together. We're trying to buy one good camera and install it in one place in the church with one cord to one laptop to make it so that even if it's not, something I have to keep telling myself is we're not the National Cathedral, right? So even if it is not the highest quality, even if it is not the most beautiful, but it consistently works, that's better for us, because I found that where people get stuck is not if they connect and the Wi-Fi is the picture is a little grainy or whatever, but if the live stream fails or the camera's not working and they get kicked out of the meeting or whatever, that's when their worship experience gets interrupted. So we're trying to keep it really simple. One camera, one computer. The one thing I want to buy is one good microphone for our piano and organ. And sort of keep it simple in that way, because of sort of who we are and the volunteer capacity we have.
Thank you. That's helpful, because a lot of us have very limited resources. I know in our congregation, we've chosen to put what resources we have towards improving our internet connection, trying to upgrade our internet connectivity, drilling ridiculous holes through concrete and that sort of thing so that we can get stable internet, because we don't even have that. We can't live stream from the church without using my hotspot currently, which is not a cheap thing to do. So that's something we're investing in. There are a couple of people who've said they've been streaming for a long time using Boxcast, which is another piece of technology to use. Angela, you all are going in a slightly different approach. You're making an investment in long-term technology for broadcast.
Yes, we are investing in, it's a substantial upgrade, particularly to the audio system that we now have. And like I mentioned, adding 3 cameras. And there's this interface called TriCaster that will allow us to maintain a Zoom presence because Zoom is so integral to the way in which we worship, was not willing for us to sacrifice that and just go to a straight live stream what's happening. So we'll be able to have people participate through Zoom, as always, in terms of exchanging the peace, and then have breakout rooms for hospitality. Right now, we cannot have people inside to worship. We offer the spiritual Eucharist, so we can't have that inside, but we can distribute the sacrament outdoors, up to 50 people, 75 minutes. So we've also ordered an FM transmitter. So we have an FM station now, and we're waiting for another component. And so that will allow us to have people to park their cars, bring in chairs. We only have a concrete surface. I don't know if anybody wants to put a blanket on the concrete and sit down for worship. Maybe, I don't know. But that will be an option. Then I thought, as the weather turns cold, as it does this far south, and we know that global warming may inhibit a true winter, but people can sit in their cars, listen to the service, and the sacrament in one kind can be distributed that way. So that's what I'm thinking about for the future, and most excited about being able to offer the sacrament to folks, because that in person, because that hasn't happened since March. And the spiritual Eucharist, which is something that I opted to do really after watching the National Cathedral, seeing what was being done there. The interesting thing about that for me is there was the guidance that the clergy, consecrate, consume, go on about your business. Well, I made a conscious decision not to do that, understanding that I am equal with the layperson. I was not going to, take the sacrament on their behalf. But then during a worship committee meeting, I asked if people were participating in that, and they said yes. Because what I would say, bring your cracker, bread, beverage of your choice. And they let me know how meaningful that is for them. They understand that it's not transubstantiation, but being able to continue in that ritual made a huge difference. And then guess what I started to do after the service? I consumed too. So keeping Eucharist there is very important in one way or another in our context, and I'm so happy we can do it outside now.
Yeah, so Angela, you brought up something that has been a source of some of the chat and questions, is how are we adapting our liturgy itself for an online platform versus an in-person platform? I know at St. G's, we're doing morning prayer online, and it is a very different way of doing it than we would had we been in the church. I don't lead it. I have parishioners who lead it. I hardly participate. I have 15 different people that are leading worship on Sunday because we do it via Zoom. I wonder, Richard, Scott, Angela, have y'all found other ways of engaging parishioners and altering the liturgy slightly for the online presence?
In our situation, it's not altered that much. We still follow the same liturgy. Liturgy of the word, liturgy of the table. The lectors come in and participate from their homes. The preachers come through Zoom, through their homes. We have added other opportunities. Example, for the greeter, there's someone who's an usher who will take the count. But it was important for me in the midst of the pandemic, when so much was changing and things were unfamiliar and uncertain, that we have an opportunity for a stability. The stability coming with the routine, the regularity of the Eucharist, familiar. And so that's what we stayed with.
Absolutely. Richard, were you going to say something?
I was trying to come up with a sentence that involved both Anglo-Catholic and changing liturgy.
I did giggle when I offered the question.
So yeah, I mean, everything Angela said really resonated with me. I mean, I think people at that very sort of fearful, uncertain, difficult time, needed to be reminded of those things that do not change, those things that will endure. And the liturgy is one of them, particularly for people who follow this kind of tradition. Now, we did have to rethink choreography and ritual because of things like social distancing. So we actually have had to make some pretty big shifts about where people stand. If you have a deacon will go here and the subdeacon will go there. And how do you retain the essentials while keeping everybody safe at the same time? That's what we grappled with. But even with 10 people, we still had a whole load of incense and everything looked pretty much the same as always. So I think it was kind of an Anglo-Catholic win.
So Richard, I'm dying to know, did you figure out a way to Zoom the incense?
Well, it was on, well, we
television, that would be
I'll
great.
let you into a secret. Joe knows this because he was watching. We didn't think the choreography out for the well for the Easter Vigil, and we moved the Easter fire to include it in the camera shot without realizing we had a smoke detector overhead. So halfway through the Exalted, the fire brigade arrived to see these, 10 people, some with British accents, sort of running around wearing lace, and you could sort of see them thinking, what on earth are these people doing? But yeah, it's been pretty fun to sort of see those traditions and aesthetics and beauty and sounds and all those sorts of things translate pretty well.
Well, and this is where context is really, really, I'm sort of thinking this through right now. We are decidedly not an Anglo-Catholic parish. And in conversation with our parishioners, one of the ways to keep, for us at least, to keep on folks that are worshiping online engaged is to give, is to recognize that when you're sitting online, when you're sitting at home in front of a computer, life is just much more distracting. And a full sort of hour mass for most of our folks just wasn't really quite working. And morning prayer trimmed down so that it could still be slow paced and reflective, but really, and I got pretty fundamentalist about our 30-minute mark. Something kind of happens after that for our folks who are sitting online, even if they're saying the words along with you, singing along with the hymns while they're at home, it just gets harder to be present. And so when we think about adapting going into Advent, we'll go back to that where we'll begin. I'm going to encourage folks to make their own Advent wreath at home. We'll light the Advent wreath. We'll pray. We'll say some canticles. We'll hear some music. We'll have a 3 to 5 minute sermon, and we'll finish. And it's kind of the interaction between the emotions, the spirituality, the depth of person that comes along with worship versus the forms. And I think at the same time, we did hear from people that they were longing for the Eucharist, perhaps not as much as I was, but they were longing for it. And so in the summer, when we had the weather and the space to do Eucharist outside, we did. And we had, about half of our ASA attending outdoor worship. And so for us in a smaller parish, we can be a little bit more dialogical and kind of move back and forth with the needs of our folks. And so I find myself not doing a lot of long-term planning because the landscape changes and the needs of our people change. And sometimes they'll need this well-grounded, well memorized Eucharistic liturgy, and sometimes they just need to feel connected to one another and to God, and that happens a little better in a smaller package.
I think you made a good point, Scott, is that context does matter. And I think that's what I love about this panel and the variety of people that are in the chat, is that what works for one is not going to work for the other, and that we're all attending to our particularity of context to help people as best we can hold on to their faith, hold on to their spirituality, to love God, love neighbor, and be able to worship and remain community together. And I love the diversity of ways in which we can do that. There are a couple of questions in the chat that I'd love to bring forward if I could.
And can I add a bit about music? We've only touched upon just music in terms of spirituality and helping people to connect that way. Our organist music director has made tremendous strides in being able to integrate choir members to allow them to still participate. And then we can also sing along with the music being posted there, but hearing their voices blended together so they are included. And people at home, I've heard some comments of people saying that piece of music we sang on Sunday, it really touched me. So that becomes an important part of pastoral care. You know, St. Augustine said, those who sing pray twice. So we can provide that opportunity for people to continue to be engaged that way.
I think that's a great point, Angela, is that music really does resonate with people. And since this is a webinar that's targeted towards small to mid-sized parishes, I will say I have seen several small congregations doing a great job of collaborating with music, of sharing recorded pieces. So to have meaningful music does not mean it has to come out of our particular worshiping community. We can utilize pre-recorded pieces from other congregations easily. And I know we have a music minister at our congregation who's really good at doing that. And we put ours on Facebook, and I've encouraged colleagues to just pull it down and use it because it's there. And I encourage us to do that, right? How do we collaborate and share resources in this time when resources, including our own, are limited, and how we do that? So that's a great point. Music is so important to our being. There was a question in the chat I thought was really interesting. It's been on my mind too. What about the role of altar guilds in the time of pandemic? For those of us, we have not been back to in-person worship at all. For a small hybrid that may be not Eucharist in full kind, what is the role of altar guilds? How are you keeping them engaged and helping them still feel like their ministry is meaningful? Do y'all have thoughts on that?
Yes, thoughts and experience. So we have an altar guild and also a flower guild. So whenever we're inside the church live streaming, that gives one person the opportunity to come in and have everything set up and prepared. And he's not there during the service, but he's delighted to be engaged in that way. Someone can wash linens afterwards. And then the flower guild, again, when we're inside the nave live streaming, they put together a beautiful flower arrangement. So that's how they stay engaged.
One very modest accommodation that we made. We are in the church doing Eucharist right now, like I said, and some of our altar guild wanted to participate, but they don't want to be in the church when other people are there. They certainly don't want to be in the sacristy when other people are there. So my getting comfortable with leaving the dirty dishes until Tuesday when there was going to be no one in the building and they could come and do their work alone in a prayerful way and in a safe way for them was important. I've also just asked sort of specifically for their feedback and input sort of separately for what we're doing as a church going forward. And they see something about the church that I don't always see, and can be helpful in thinking about how we're gonna do a campfire Eucharist, or how we're gonna do Advent with everyone online. They see what I don't see, and I think just being engaged in that way has been helpful for our guild. I hope, at least.
That's a great way of involving them. I saw another question earlier about, Scott, you talked about the need to limit online worship time to 30 minutes. And I think we all agree that our attention spans for looking at our screens are shorter than our attention spans in person. And how do you all view that balance when we are hybrid, right? So that when the online worship is the worship in person, how do we balance those two? Are there ways to engage the online people in a way that keeps them engaged? Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
We're not able to have in-person worship like that.
Yeah. But I think it's a good question looking forward, right? So we know that moving forward, we will eventually, at some point, God willing, have human beings next to human beings worshiping in a building at some point. And when that happens, we also will have technology. We have these cameras, we have these sound systems. We will be doing this. And I think it's a great question so that we can look at engaging both. Are there ways to have Zoom jockeys or YouTube vergers that keep people engaged as they worship online, or provide them with. I had friends who provided meditation moments in the chat, right, as opposed to a full-on sermon. Thoughts of prayer about this. And I wonder, are there ways to, Richard, you talked about how you pray for the people who are online in your Mass. Do you offer an opportunity for people online to offer prayers of intercession that are then said aloud during the in-person Mass?
People use the chat box on the Facebook comment facility extensively on Sunday mornings. And of course, I wish I could read them as the Mass was going on. I think it would be fascinating to see them in real time. But the other good thing about that is if we have a techno problem, if a number of people are saying we can't hear or something like that, whoever's operating the iPad and switcher and all these mystical things, they can go and remedy that issue in real time. Something I would add about keeping people at home engaged, again, I would go back to the online formation. Something that we were doing before we started the outdoor Mass was a sort of Sunday morning forum or book study by Zoom. And we were finding that the people who were not going to come in person were still participating in that way. And not only were they learning, but they were getting some sense of fellowship as well. And it seems to me right now, we just have to take any opportunity for connectedness that we can get. Just sort of, reach out in every possible direction and understand that one size is never going to fit all, and it's going to be a whole lot of hard work, but this is what we need to do to keep the body together.
Yeah, I agree. There's someone on the chat says that their priest monitors the chat for intercession and they're streaming Guru. So they've jumped past jockey and to Guru monitors for issues. We do the same at St. Greg's. We have somebody who monitors the Facebook chat and the Zoom chat to bring it forward so we can all participate together. I wonder what you all think about, it's something that a group I was in talked about recently, as we move forward, when people are together in person in worship as a regular sort of activity, and we have our online congregation also worshiping with us simultaneously. How do you feel about people in worship then having their devices with them, logged into Zoom and, panning at the piece and sharing things? How do you feel about people in the congregation engaging with the online community? Does that feel like it's something that's going to be a part of our lives together? And how might we use that liturgically?
I think it was kind of already happening, but to a smaller extent. I was seeing people with their phones out, right, during the Eucharist, maybe even during the sermon. I would see afterwards, occasionally people would be posting things onto Facebook during Mass. They would be writing about something they'd heard, something they'd seen, something that resonated with them. And I always thought that was kind of a good thing. Anything that we can do to get church out there on social media in positive and encouraging ways is good. So, I'll be saying to people, phones out, that's fine by me.
Yeah, I think
I agree. The phones are here to stay, and we can't have paper right now. And for the first time, I'll have an outdoor burial service this coming Saturday that will be completely paperless. And so everyone will receive the order of service by phone, and it's just going to be part of what we do. And as Richard said, it was there before, and so it will continue on. So we trust that people are worshiping and not reading the New York Times during the service.
I'm okay if they read the New York Times, if they let me know what's going on, but I guess, I don't know. But yeah, I think the cat's out of the bag on that one. People are already engaged on their phones with each other or on Facebook or elsewhere during liturgies. I did see in the chat, this is not exactly that, but sort of getting back to, we assume that we're going to have people worshiping online now. for years to come. Some of my folks who have difficulty hearing or seeing when they're in person have actually found the online worshiping experience to be much more fulfilling. They can hear me and understand me better. They'll stay online even when we're back together. And I saw, this gets back to the Altar Guild also, I saw someone talk about moving a TV into the church so that they could see the people at home on Zoom. I do have designs to try this out, you know, sort of roll it in on a TV cart like a substitute teacher, and see if people can see the people at home on Zoom and what that feels like with the worship space. I don't love the idea of a big TV in the nave, but I don't love a lot of things that are happening right now, and we have to meet our people where they are so that they can be connected to one another. So it's already in the works here to try that out if I can get my vestry and Altar Guild on board with that.
Yeah, I think it's a new reality. It's a new reality. The thing that's interesting is I am hearing people who were completely opposed to technology prior to this, who would come to me to complain because they saw Joe Smith on his phone during the service. I'm like, it was during the sermon, Joe was bored, it's okay. You know, now are embracing the technology. And so I think it may, in fact, allow us to expand our uses of it. And we might even be able to have some of that. How do we get the people on Zoom physically present with us in the room so we can see them? Because I think that's an important part of what we do. There have been several questions about Advent and Christmas coming up and that happening. I know that Virginia Seminary did a fantastic webinar on logistics of worshiping for Advent and Christmas, but do you all have any particular thoughts about that since you're here and we know you're thinking about it?
One thought that I have had is that on Christmas Eve, I will have to do something outside. And the good thing is my British childhood prepared me to be freezing cold. But I have all these ideas about trying to set up a little creche on the lawn, some Christmas decorations, but I need to give people every possible opportunity to worship at Christmas. And that will mean indoors, it will mean on Zoom, and it will mean outdoors as well. And even under the limitations and restrictions, my perspective is that it will be great. It will be great to celebrate Christmas together, even in these really extraordinary ways.
We're thinking similarly that we'll throw everything at the wall. I'm hopefully going to do, like I said, Advent will mostly be pre-recorded morning prayer on YouTube. But with Christmas Eve, I'm hoping to offer something outside on December 24th in Chicagoland and just see what happens. But we will also offer a Zoom Christmas pageant because not everyone in our congregation is comfortable with Zoom, but some are. So a Zoom Christmas pageant that will probably be pre-recorded and shared with the congregation on Christmas Eve, an outdoor service, an indoor service. And if only I can be there, still there will be an indoor service with all the poinsettias and all that kind of stuff, everything we can muster. And then we'll just deliver the poinsettias to people's homes. We have people ready to do that.
Engage your holy parka.
So yeah, my goal is to try to keep things as close to normal as possible. Advent wreath will be there inside the church as long, they talk about the cases spiking. So here in Georgia, there was a time when we could not live stream from our churches. We were encouraged to do it from home. So, but as long as we can go inside the church, I plan to do that with a small team. And I'm hoping we can still have the 30-minute pilgrimages. I think it will be meaningful for people to come in during Advent and see the church decorated in such a beautiful way. And also to offer times when there is incense and incense free, just to keep those elements of normality available for folks. And I too am hoping for a virtual Christmas pageant this year, and not 3 services on Christmas Eve, but 1 service. But we'll see. We'll see.
And it is a challenge. We opted to shift, and we are going to do Christmas Eve service. I'm going to try to stream it from outside, but we will have it online. But our primary service will be Christmas Day, because we know this year people aren't traveling and family isn't coming in. And so people find themselves at odd ends with Christmas and not sure what to do with themselves. So we're moving our primary service to 11 on Christmas Day. We've always had a Christmas Day service that's been small, but this will be the big one. The kids are going to read, and we're wearing our pajamas, and we're coming to church, and we're going to do the big service on Christmas Day. And the response has been overwhelming from our congregation to have that midday 11 a.m. thing. And we're going to have a coffee hour afterwards for anybody who's alone and wants to stay and have friends to talk to for Christmas Day. So we're all doing what we can. There were some questions, Scott, about your pageant. I know we're doing a pageant too. We're going to try to do an Epiphany pageant on Zoom with the kids reading parts. We're doing ours as a reporter, reporting on the birth. I know Virginia Seminary, their Center for Lifelong Learning has some great ideas for online Christmas pageants. Are there thoughts that you have, Scott, that you want to share in our last minute?
No, I don't know how we're going to do it yet. Christmas is so far away, but it will happen.
Y'all, I do know that it's 2:59. We had agreed to try to keep it to an hour. If there are other questions, submit them. We're going to all hang out together if we can. If there are pressing questions, we can stay to answer them. But for those of you who committed to an hour, we thank you for being here. We thank you for coming and sharing your time with us, and for putting your thoughts and wisdom in the chat. The chat can be saved, so you can press it and move forward. I think you can too. Press the 3 dots on the chat button. It says save chat. If you can't, then I'm sure Joe will, and will send it to us with the recording. Thanks, Joe. Panelists, if you have a few minutes, there are a few more questions if you have time, but I want to acknowledge that other people said they would go. Somebody said, is anybody having luck with Zoom worship? Zoom music and worship? I know we don't do that. We record and then play the music through special settings in Zoom because it doesn't work live. How about anybody else have any other suggestions? Just recorded it.
Well, our musician will sometimes have he and his husband at home. His husband has a beautiful voice, and so he'll sing as a soloist and accompanied by his husband on the organ piano that they have there. So that comes over through Zoom quite well. But anything else, like from the worship space itself, we sometimes have trouble. But it's pre-recorded in that space, and it works.
Mm-hmm. Yes, excellent. All right, well, thanks everybody. Great thoughts about doing this. Please do this again in a few weeks. Maybe we can drag everybody back. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate everybody being here and giving your time. Thank you so much to Angela and Richard and Scott for your time, for your vulnerability and opening up the curtains of your church to us. We're all doing the best we can in this time. Thank you. Everybody, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and God bless everyone.